now with someone who's got decades of experience, who has a new book out tomorrow. You might be amused by the title, How to Be a Politician. Well, Sir Vince Cable, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Liz Truss certainly has climbed to the top of that ladder in a more unconventional way with the downfall of Boris Johnson. We've had quite a lot of negativity behind this table this morning to her position. Are you feeling positive about the new Prime Minister?
Well, I would want to be, but, you know, the situation, I think there are two fundamental points of contrast with when I came into the government at the beginning of the coalition. The first is that now, as then, we have a horrendous economic challenge. The contrast is that, you know, we had what you might call political legitimacy, a mandate. You know, we had two parties with 60% of the popular vote in a general election, whereas she has no mandate at the moment. She may go to the country early on. She seems to be hinting against it and to try to get a mandate. But at the moment, she doesn't have, and her position, unfortunately, in Parliament and outside is relatively weak, and she can't afford to make mistakes. So we had an opportunity to operate for 5 years, better or worse, but we were able to provide stable government and make mistakes because we had a political mandate. She has none, unfortunately, and has no room for making mistakes. And the positive thing is that I think her approach of, the big bazooka approach to the economy, being willing to borrow very heavily in the short run to get us over the spike in energy prices produced by Russia's contraction of gas supplies is the right approach. And to take a risk on that is, I think, the right thing, and I hope it comes off.
And I hope your book comes off as well. Interested in it, so much interest in politics from our audience. And, how to be a politician, is it a handbook as to actually how to climb up the ladder, or is it a number of stories that you've laced together? What sort of book is it?
Well, it's attempting to be humorous. It draws on a large pool of quotations, but mixed in with it, I hope, a little nuggets of insight and understanding. So it's part serious, part funny. Somebody who wasn't, I think, trying to be flattering described it as a sort of A-level politics, but much more fun. I think that's probably the right level. But I start with the kind of cynical observation of Billy Connolly, who said, anybody who expresses a wish to be a politician should be barred from life from ever becoming one, and try to address that cynicism. And the unfortunate problem is that politicians start with a bad reputation. There is a big poll, which I quote, in about 20 countries with lots of different professions, medics, teachers, estate agents, bankers, television presenters. And unfortunately, in almost every country, regardless of their recent history, politicians come bottom of the table in terms of public trust. So we start from a difficult place, but I do argue that it's a job that's worth doing, and it has to be done. You know, somebody has to empty the bins, somebody has to keep the drains functioning, and somebody has to keep the political system working in a democracy. And it's a messy job, and you can be very unpopular, but it's important to do it. And I encourage young people to do it.
You can be hugely unpopular. When we look at sort of the ratings of prime ministers when they get into office, normally they have a sort of honeymoon period and then it just drops off a cliff. How long do you think Liz Truss's honeymoon period will last?
Well, I think she'll get an initial boost. I mean, the public don't know her at all and start off, it would appear from the YouGov surveys, to have a very negative impression from these leadership hustings. But, if she makes a few of the right moves and talks about approaching this as a country rather than simply through the lens of the Tory party, she will get a boost of support. And if the economic policies that are being pursued seem to be going in the right direction, we'll get a lift from that. I wrote a blog a couple of days ago in which I argue that there is a way through. It's very difficult. I found it difficult to believe she will succeed, but it's possible. And if so, she might be wise to go to the country early next year, because beyond that, the problems start to mount up. You've got massively underfunded public services.
Yeah.
You'll have debt service, and the government actually will have to increase taxes, not decrease them. So that may be her escape route.
Sir Vince, there is so much we could be talking to you about. Everything's topical and everything, the whole thing about the book on how to be a politician. How to be the Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. You had to do that in your term in government, in your term at Cabinet under the coalition government. The job under Liz Truss has gone to Jacob Rees-Mogg. What do you think?
Well, I worry about it. I mean, Jacob Rees-Mogg in many ways is a very charming man, but I think what's required at the moment is, well, first of all, getting a support package for business. It's not clear what form that is going to take. When I was there, the main challenge was to get capital into business because the banks had seized up and weren't lending. And the business community is going to have to get a support package. We had one under the pandemic, the furlough scheme, and something comparable is going to happen now. And whether he's got the temperament for large-scale government intervention, I largely doubt. His previous pronouncements don't indicate it. And of course, the other requirement is to combine a belief in low carbon with a belief in our national energy security. And his comments on climate change, I don't think, are really compatible with that, or indeed with what Boris Johnson was trying to do. Boris had actually had a good record on decarbonisation, COP26 and all that. And Rees-Mogg seems a bit of a sceptic.
That's the energy title within the brief. And just as briefly as you can, energy is the thing that is first and foremost, I would imagine, in Liz Truss's in tray to deal with. It's what everybody is worrying about. If you were still in that job, would you be advocating a windfall tax on the energy companies or not?
I wouldn't, actually. I think, there are real problems with the wind. We have one at the moment, and maybe the government can squeeze a bit more out of the oil companies, but actually it's a short-term fix. You're going to have the problem a year or two down the line when the oil price, the gas price slumps. Are we then going to compensate the companies for having a bad time? And it's also, the point's often forgotten that these gigantic profits of BP and Shell and the others are mostly on the worldwide operations. In Australia, Nigeria, China, or wherever. They're not earned in the UK. The only bit that's relevant to the UK is the North Sea, and windfall taxes in the North Sea are a bit precarious.